Ladies and gentlemen, they said she's too quiet, too distant, said she pushes people away. But let me tell you something. She ain't broken. She's chosen. See, when God wants to make something rare, he hides it. He doesn't put diamonds in the street. He buries them deep. And that woman walking alone, she's not lost. She's in process. She's in purpose. You may not see it now, but heaven already wrote it down. People talk, people leave, people misunderstand the silence. But God sees the whole picture. And when the world turns its back, God steps in closer. Every lonely night, he was there. Every time she wondered why me, God was whispering, because I chose you. She's not chasing the crowd because she knows her calling. She's not begging for love because she's already covered in grace. Her path may be narrow. It may be quiet, but it's holy. You don't need noise when you're walking with purpose. And hear this, walking alone doesn't mean you're alone. It means you're walking with God, step by step, breath by breath, faith over fear. It means the world may not clap, but heaven is watching. Angels are guarding. And God is building something in her that can't be shaken. So the next time you see a woman walking alone, don't pity her. Respect her. Because that's not a woman who's weak. That's a woman who is dangerous to darkness. That's a woman God trusts with the quiet battles. She's not broken. She's becoming. She's chosen. ChatGPT said, they say when someone walks alone, it's because they couldn't keep up with the world, because they weren't strong enough to hold on to love, or because they push people away. But that's not always the truth. In fact, many times the person who walks alone is the one who made the hardest decision. The decision to leave behind what was comfortable, what was familiar, what was loud, in exchange for what was sacred, silent, and soul-defining. Walking alone isn't weakness. It's not giving up. It's not a cry for help. It's often a sign that someone has heard a higher calling, one that requires the kind of quiet the world doesn't understand. To walk alone takes courage. It takes conviction. It takes a sense of who you are, and more importantly, whose you are. The woman who chooses to walk alone is not stepping away from people because she hates them. She's stepping away because she's protecting her peace, her energy, her growth. She's not running from love. She's running toward purpose. When a woman chooses the solitary path, it's often because she's chosen to no longer entertain noise over meaning, distraction over destiny. And that choice, that's divine strength. There is a strength in silence that can't be measured by how many people are cheering for you. There is a strength in being alone that can't be validated by likes, texts, or praise. It's a strength that comes from knowing your value without having to see it reflected in someone else's eyes. It's a strength that comes from walking with God so closely that even if no one claps for you, even if no one stands with you, even if no one understands you, you keep going. Because you know that the one who called you is greater than the opinions of those who never could. A woman walking alone is a woman in alignment. She's listening to something deeper. Her steps aren't random. They're guided. Every time she says no to a relationship that doesn't serve her soul, every time she turns down an opportunity that compromises her character, every time she chooses time with God over attention from people, she is standing in divine strength. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's not always seen, but it is unshakable. Sometimes strength looks like sitting in your room with tears in your eyes and choosing not to go back to something toxic. Sometimes strength is deleting a number you memorized by heart. Sometimes it's eating dinner alone and not feeling lonely. Sometimes it's saying, I deserve more, even when you don't know what's coming next. This strength, this divine strength, is not about having it all together. It's about choosing what's right, even when it's hard. It's about trusting that the solitude you're in is not punishment. It's preparation. There are battles that can't be fought in a crowd. There are lessons that can't be learned in noise. There's clarity that only comes in isolation. And the woman who walks alone isn't avoiding growth. She's walking right into it. She's not escaping reality. She's confronting it with a kind of grace that only comes from walking with God. She knows that sometimes God separates you so he can speak to you. Sometimes he isolates you so he can anoint you. And sometimes the only way to rise is to first be still. People might look at her and say she's alone, but what they don't see is the fire in her spirit. They don't see the way she's rebuilding herself from the inside out. They don't see the way she talks to God when the world goes quiet. They don't see how every silent moment is shaping her, strengthening her, making her wiser, calmer, more anchored in truth. She's not weak. She's rooted. She's not broken. She's being rebuilt by hands far more capable than hers. To walk alone is to walk in faith. It's to keep moving when the road is unclear. It's to say, I trust you when nothing makes sense. It's to release what you thought your life should be and embrace what it's becoming. That kind of faith doesn't come easy. It comes through fire, through waiting, through saying goodbye to what no longer fits, through knowing that peace is better than company and that growth is more valuable than comfort. And yes, sometimes she misses what she walked away from. She thinks about the people who left, the places she had to exit, the love that didn't last. But even in those moments, she doesn't regret the path she's on, because this path, though it's quiet, though it's lonely, though it's uncertain, is holy. It's sacred ground. It's where she meets herself. It's where she meets God. This is not weakness. Weakness would have been staying. Weakness would have been settling. Weakness would have been faking a smile, pretending to be okay in rooms where her soul was screaming. But she chose the wilderness. She chose obedience over applause. And that, more than anything, is divine strength. You don't measure a woman's strength by how many people stand beside her. You measure it by how she stands when no one else does. You measure it by the choices she makes when no one's watching, by the integrity she keeps when the world offers her shortcuts, by the faith she holds on to when everything is falling apart. That is power. That is sacred. That is the walk of someone who has been chosen for more. She doesn't walk with arrogance. She walks with assurance. She walks with grace. She walks with eyes wide open, not just to the world around her, but to the kingdom within her. She walks not to impress, but to impact. She walks not to be seen, but because she sees now clearly. She sees who she is. She sees who God is. And that vision is more valuable than any crowd, more fulfilling than any romance, more steady than any plan. So when you see her walking alone, don't assume she's lost. She knows exactly where she's going. Don't assume she's lonely. She's surrounded by angels, protected by purpose, lifted by prayer, and to. Don't assume she's weak. She's standing in a strength that's unbreakable, unshakable, and undeniable. It's not the kind of strength the world understands. It's the kind of strength that heaven recognizes. And that woman, the one who walks alone, she's not just walking, she's rising, she's becoming, she's preparing, she's answering a call that only she can hear. And God, in all his infinite wisdom, is walking with her, step by step, breath by breath, day by day. Because when God chooses someone for something great, he doesn't start with the crowd. He starts with the quiet. And in that quiet, he builds strength. Not the kind that shouts, the kind that endures, that they look at her and assume she's been left behind. They whisper that maybe she wasn't good enough or too difficult to love. They call her too independent, too intense, too much. But they don't understand. She's not abandoned. She's set apart. She's not unwanted. She's chosen. There's a difference between being pushed aside and being pulled away for a greater purpose. And her journey reflects that sacred distinction. While others may see emptiness in her solitude, heaven sees alignment. While people question her silence, God is orchestrating something in it. She is not where she is by accident. She's there by design. There are seasons when God will separate you, not because he's punishing you, but because he's preparing you. And preparation requires isolation. When you're being set apart, the normal rules no longer apply. You're not being overlooked. You're being preserved. You're not being delayed. You're being developed. You're not being forgotten. You're being fortified. Everything about her path feels different because it is different. She's not meant to blend in. She's meant to stand out, but standing out always begins with standing alone. To be set apart means your life won't follow the same timeline as everyone else's. It means watching others get what you prayed for and still choosing faith. It means trusting in a purpose that doesn't come with a map, only a whisper from God that says, keep going. It means walking a narrow road while others travel the wide one and resisting the temptation to settle just because the wait feels long. It means holding on to a promise even when there's no evidence it's coming true. She is not behind. She is being built. She is being refined. She is being trusted with something bigger than the present moment. People don't always recognize what's happening in someone who has been set apart. They can't see the internal transformation, the shedding of old beliefs, the healing of old wounds, the quiet stretching of faith. They don't see the prayers whispered in the dark or the night spent wrestling with questions only God can answer. But God sees it all. And what he sees is beautiful. He sees a vessel being molded for a unique assignment. He sees a warrior being trained in patience, resilience, and strength. He sees someone he can trust. Being set apart isn't glamorous. It doesn't come with applause. It often feels lonely. It often feels unfair. But it's in that sacred space where the noise of the world fades that she hears God the clearest. It's in that separation that she becomes sensitive to his voice, to his timing, to his will. It's where he teaches her that rejection is often redirection, that delay is often divine protection, and that being alone isn't always being abandoned. It's sometimes the only way to truly become who she was created to be. She doesn't walk around bitter even when the world calls her forgotten. She walks with quiet grace because deep down she knows that God doesn't waste pain, silence, or time. She knows that what feels like abandonment is often sacred elevation. And yes, there are days she questions the journey. Days when the silence feels loud and the waiting feels like weight. But even then, she doesn't stop. She keeps pressing forward because something in her soul knows that this is holy ground, that she was never meant to be part of the crowd, that she was carved out for something different, something deep. The woman who is set apart begins to notice that she no longer fits into the places she once did. The conversations feel shallow. The connections feel forced. The spaces that once held her now feel too small. That's not a sign of arrogance. That's evidence of elevation. When God begins to expand your calling, he first stretches your character. When he begins to prepare you for more, he first removes what no longer fits. It's not always comfortable, but it's always necessary. She may mourn the loss of what once felt like home, but in her spirit, she knows she's being led somewhere far greater. Being set apart teaches her to find peace not in having control, but in trusting the process. It teaches her that her value isn't tied to being seen, heard, or understood by everyone. It's rooted in who she is when the lights are off and the world is quiet. It teaches her that love from people is beautiful, but the love of God is foundational. That affirmation from others can encourage, but identity in God anchors. So she lets go of trying to prove herself. She lets go of trying to chase validation. She embraces the quiet, not as punishment, but as a place of transformation. Others may look at her life and wonder why it's taking so long, why certain doors haven't opened, why she's still waiting, still walking, still holding on. But what they don't know is that her timeline isn't tied to man's schedule. It's tied to God's strategy. They don't know that while it looks like she's alone, she's actually in the presence of something sacred. They don't know that the wait is not in vain, it's in preparation. That every delay is intentional. That every setback is a setup. It's every lonely moment is a chance to grow stronger, deeper, wiser. She has learned that not all distance is negative. Sometimes God removes you so he can reveal you. Sometimes the desert is where he does his best work. She remembers that Moses was called in the wilderness, that David was anointed in the field, that Jesus withdrew to lonely places to pray. The pattern is clear. Separation precedes revelation. And so she walks, not with sadness, but with sacred understanding. She walks with the awareness that she is not walking away from anything. She's walking toward everything she was meant to become. She carries herself differently now, not with pride, but with purpose, not with fear, but with faith. She doesn't need everyone to understand her journey. She only needs to obey the one who designed it, because she knows that favor isn't always loud, that sometimes it comes disguised as loss, that the greatest callings often begin in the quietest places. And though she may still feel the sting of separation, she has made peace with it. Because she knows she was not abandoned. She was never rejected. She was never unloved. She was simply chosen for something greater. And when you're chosen for something greater, you must first walk roads that others don't. You must endure seasons that don't make sense. You must carry faith that withstands the silence. She's learned to see the beauty in being different, the strength in being misunderstood, the honor in being set apart. Because in being set apart, she discovered who she truly is. And in that discovery, she found a God who never leaves, never forsakes, and never makes mistakes. She walks through this world carrying a fire in her soul and a quiet storm in her spirit. And yet so often she is misunderstood. People see the surface, her silence, her stillness, her refusal to conform. and they assume she's distant, cold, or strange. They can't place her. She doesn't fit their mold, doesn't play by their rules, doesn't chase what they chase. But what they fail to see is that she isn't living for the approval of the world. She's not trying to be seen, applauded, or accepted by everyone. Because deep down, she knows something they don't. The world might not understand her, but heaven does. Every time she says no to what others say yes to, every time she walks away from something that looks good, but doesn't feel right, every time she chooses integrity over popularity, obedience over compromise, stillness over chaos, heaven is watching. God sees every tear she never let fall, every silent battle she never spoke of, every lonely moment she endured to stay aligned with her purpose. While others question her path, heaven is cheering her on, saying, keep walking. You were never meant to stand out. There is a certain kind of woman who doesn't need validation to keep going. She needs vision, and hers comes not from the world around her, but from the divine source within her. Her heart beats to the rhythm of something eternal, something unshaken by culture, trends, or opinions. She doesn't follow the crowd because she's already following a higher calling. And sometimes that calling requires her to walk alone, not because she's unworthy of love or friendship, but because her assignment requires clarity. Clarity that can only be found when the noise dies down and the soul tunes in. People ask why she's different. They wonder why she doesn't fight for attention, why she doesn't need to be the loudest voice in the room. But she has nothing to prove. When you've spent time with God, when you've sat in silence long enough to hear him whisper your name, you no longer chase what doesn't carry his peace. The world may try to define her by what she lacks, lack of status, lack of applause, lack of attachment. But heaven defines her by what she carries: faith, fire, favor, and a destiny that can't be explained in worldly terms. She's not confused about who she is. She's not waiting for someone to name her. She already knows her identity, and it's not found in titles, achievements, or relationships. It's found in truth. It's found in the quiet knowing that she was handcrafted for a purpose far bigger than herself. So when people walk away, she doesn't crumble. When they misunderstand her intentions, she doesn't explain herself endlessly. When they mock her solitude, she doesn't rush to fill the silence because she knows deep in her bones that she answers to one voice. And that voice never confuses her calling. Heaven understands the weight she carries. Heaven understands the tears she cried when no one else knew she was breaking inside. Heaven understands the choices she made in private that no one will ever applaud her for. She has sacrificed comfort for calling, applause for anointing, and popularity for purpose. The world might not give her credit for that, but heaven is keeping record. Every moment of surrender, every act of faith, every brave decision to say, God, not my will, but yours. None of it is wasted. None of it is overlooked. It's hard being that way. It's hard walking a road that few are willing to travel. It's hard being called to too intense, too spiritual, focus. But she doesn't let the labels stick. She knows that when God sets you apart, people won't always understand you, and that's okay. Noah built an ark when there wasn't a drop of rain. Esther walked into a king's court knowing it could cost her life. Mary carried a child the world couldn't comprehend. God has a long history of using misunderstood people for miraculous purposes, and she is part of that story. There is a sacred beauty in her misunderstood life. While others build platforms, she builds altars. While others seek attention, she seeks alignment. While others hustle for validation, she humbles herself in prayer. And the world may never understand that. They may call it too much, too deep, too different. But that difference, that's where her power lies. She wasn't born to fit in. She was born to shift atmospheres, break chains, carry truth, and walk with a boldness that only heaven can give. There's a reason she feels like she doesn't belong sometimes. It's because her spirit is tuned to a different frequency. The world is loud, chaotic, constantly moving, but she's learned the art of stillness. She's learned that being still doesn't mean being stagnant. It means being rooted. It means being present. It means being deeply connected to the source of her strength. The world can't always read that, but heaven knows exactly what it means. Heaven recognizes the mark of someone who walks closely with God. She may not be understood, but she is not unseen. She is not unheard. She is not without value. She is chosen, covered, guided, There's a light in her that confuses darkness. There is a wisdom in her that defies logic. There's a strength in her that didn't come from comfort. It came from being crushed and rebuilt. She is evidence that you can be overlooked by man and still overqualified by heaven. She is proof that purpose doesn't need applause. It just needs obedience. When people question her choices, she doesn't argue. When they misunderstand her silence, she doesn't rush to speak. When they don't see her worth, she doesn't lower herself to prove it, because she knows that her life is a message written in heavenly ink, one that won't always be read by those around her. And that's okay. The people meant to read it will. The opportunities meant for her will find her. The timing designed for her will unfold. She doesn't live for recognition. She lives for revelation, for alignment, for legacy. And in the quiet of her spirit, she knows, truly knows, that heaven understands her. Every prayer she's whispered, every step of faith she's taken, every decision to let go of something good in order to wait for something God sent. None of it has been in vain. The world may question it. Heaven validates it. She walks with that confidence, that quiet, unshakable truth, and no misunderstanding can take that away. They look at her and see the cracks, the scars, the tired eyes, and assume she's broken. They hear the silence in her voice, feel the distance in her presence, and think she's falling apart. But they don't know what's happening behind the scenes. They don't understand the transformation taking place beneath the surface. She isn't broken. She's becoming something stronger, deeper, wiser. She's not collapsing under the weight of life. She's being reshaped by it. She's being refined in fire, not consumed by it. Pain didn't destroy her. It awakened her inward, made her dig deeper into herself, made her search for meaning in the middle of mess. She's not drowning. She's learning how to breathe differently. She's not giving up. She's letting go of what no longer serves her, what was never meant for her, what kept her small. She is shedding pieces of herself that were built from fear, from people pleasing, from survival. What you're seeing is not her breaking. It's her breaking free. There's a quiet strength in becoming. It doesn't always look beautiful. Sometimes it looks like crying at midnight and showing up anyway in the morning. Sometimes it looks like standing in front of the mirror, trying to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Sometimes it looks like walking away from what you prayed for because now you know it wasn't right. This is not collapse. This is construction. She's not fallen into pieces, being rearranged by purpose. Her story isn't over. It's being rewritten with more truth and less fear. The world is quick to label someone as broken, but she refuses that label. She refuses to be defined by a chapter of struggle or a season of suffering. She knows she's more than what hurt her, more than what tried to silence her, more than what she lost. The pain shaped her, yes, but it didn't steal her essence. It revealed it. It showed her what mattered. It taught her resilience. It taught her what it means to rise when no one is watching, when no one is cheering, when no one even knows how hard the climb is. She's in the middle now. The in-between, that sacred silent space between who she was and who she's becoming. And it's messy here. It's not polished. It's not perfect. It's full of questions and waiting and inner work. But this space, this becoming, is holy ground. This is where her soul is learning to walk differently, to speak more gently to herself, to unlearn patterns that were never hers to begin with. She's discovering that strength isn't about appearing okay. It's about being real, being present, being willing to feel and heal. There are days she feels tired, not just in her body, but in her spirit. Days when the weight of becoming feels too heavy, but she keeps going because something deep inside her knows this is the way forward. Not around, not over, but through the discomfort, through the growing pains, through the moments when old versions of herself try to pull her back. She resists not because she has all the answers, but because she's committed to the journey. Because she knows the cost of staying stuck is greater than the fear of change. She doesn't want to go back to the girl who settled for less, who kept quiet to keep the peace, who hid her light so others wouldn't feel small. That version of her served a purpose, but she's outgrown it. She's expanding now, stretching into someone who tells the truth, who walks in integrity, who chooses herself without guilt. And while not everyone understands this shift, she doesn't need them to. She's not becoming for them. She's becoming for the woman God created her to be. The one who lives in alignment, who walks with purpose, who stands even when it's hard. There's beauty in this process, even when it hurts, because becoming means hope, It means forward motion. It means she's not stuck. It means she still believes in the possibility of more healing, more joy, more wholeness. She's learning to celebrate the small wins. The day she didn't quit, the boundaries she upheld. The moment she chose peace over drama, these things might seem minor, but to her, they are milestones. Markers on the path of progress. Evidence that the work she's doing is real, even if it's invisible to others. And yes, she still carries wounds, but they're no longer open. They've become reminders of how far she's come, of what she survived, of the strength that lives in her bones. She doesn't pretend she's unaffected. She's just no longer defined by what happened. She's defined by what she chose to do with it. And she chose growth. She chose to rise. She chose to believe that her story still holds purpose, that her pain can be transformed, that she can become someone who not only survived, but who now thrives. People may not see the transformation. They may still look at her through the lens of her past, but that's not her concern. She doesn't need everyone to understand her journey. She only needs to be true to it. She only needs to keep becoming faithfully, intentionally, authentically, because this version of her, the one being shaped in fire and truth, is the most powerful she's ever been. She's not performing anymore. She's not pretending. She's evolving. Slowly, steadily, surely. So no, she isn't broken. She's building. She's rising. She's learning to carry herself with grace and grit. She's discovering that healing is not a destination, but a daily decision. She's realizing that wholeness is possible, not because everything is perfect, but because she is choosing to show up fully, vulnerably, unapologetically. And in that choice, day after day, she is becoming someone fierce, someone soft, someone wise, someone real. She was never broken. She was being rebuilt. Every step she took alone, every tear she shed in silence, every time she chose purpose over popularity, solitude over settling, and faith over fear, she was becoming the woman God always intended her to be. The world may never fully understand her, may never grasp the depth of her strength or the fire calling, but heaven knows her name. She is not abandoned. She's been set apart, not weak, divinely strong, not broken, beautifully becoming. And through it all, she walks with a quiet power. Not because of who she is, but because of who walks with her. She doesn't need to explain her journey. She is the proof of it.